Well, in this episode, Dude and JD interview Kaveh Zamanian, founder of Rabbit Hole and co-author of Mother of Bourbon. So sit back, grab a pour, kick up your feet, and enjoy this episode of The Bourbon Hunters.
Gather round the mic, it's time to unwind. Drinking our bottles, all that we find. With tastings and tales, we're sharing our pours. Tune in each week, there will always be more. Tune in each week, there's lots to hear. Laughter and stories, we're all here to share. We're giving our ratings, they're always fair. Sit back, grab a pour, kick up your feet and enjoy.
While you're listening, head over to our website at bourbonhunters.com where you can purchase Bourbon Hunters glassware and products, and sign up for our Patreon, which puts you on the list for single barrel announcements from our private barrel club.
Tune in each week, sit back. Tune in each week, grab a pour. Tune in each week, kick up your feet and enjoy. Kick up your feet and enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of The Bourbon Hunters. I'm Dude Poole, and I'm joined by
JD Fritches.
And today we have the co-author of the book, Mother of Bourbon. Burden. That's a
Beast of Bourbon.
That's a little slip there. Mother of Bourbon. So we've got, was it Kaveh? Is that how you say it?
Yep, Kaveh.
All right. So Kaveh, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners, and we'll get into this and start talking about the book a little bit.
Guys, thanks for having me here. My name is Kaveh Zamanian. I'm the founder of Rabbit Hole, Mary Dowling Whiskey Company, and the Chief Whiskey Officer for Pernod Ricard for their American whiskey portfolio.
Nice. So you've had a lot of experience in the whiskey world, if you will. And I know today the main thing we're here to talk about is the book. We'll talk about some of the whiskey and all those things and some of your journeys along the way. But what got you interested in writing a book?
Well, I found out about Mary probably about 10 years ago. She was a footnote in a book that I had picked up. And over the years, just learned slowly here and there a little bit about her. And when I got the IP rights to Waterfill and Fraser and Dowling Brothers, I felt that it's really important if we're going to launch a brand or relaunch a brand, is to do something that's in her honor. And I wanted to learn as much as I can about her, which ultimately, took me down another rabbit hole where I learned so much about her and realized how much of a great, incredible woman she was, a person she was, that we felt that it's really important to bring her story to life.
Well, I mean, as you're reading the book, and we'll get into more detail here, but like one of the things that I took away from it, one of the biggest things, is you think about all these different things like pioneers. You think of Elijah Craig being, the father of bourbon, air quotes, all that kind of thing. All the lore and the things that people like to put behind whiskey brands and all that type of stuff. But if you take a step back, I mean, she truly was a pioneer in the sense that she's a woman at a time when women weren't really doing or even allowed to do a lot of this stuff. So, I mean, pioneer from that perspective, of just basically exuding her will out on the industry and in the market, which I think was an incredible takeaway for me from the book. So whether you stumbled on it or whether it was, in the making as a plan or anything like that, I think it couldn't have been a better time for a book like that, in my opinion. So, talking about, the women's rights and you've got all the different things going on right now with like equal pay and different things like that, that are just topical at the moment. And then just kind of taking a step back and looking at the history of how far we've actually come. And, just a little over 100, 150 years or whatever the case may be. And, not to diminish what it is that we have accomplished in that short amount of time. So I think the book really did a good job of kind of pointing that out. And, we take a lot of things for granted at this day and age. And then you just think about that's just a few generations removed. And this is the hardships that a woman was having to go through to basically run a business. So I know that was a very, very long-winded, not even really an introduction, but that was my biggest thing. And I'd been waiting to talk about that for like a month or two. So
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think you're absolutely right. She came of age at a time when women had no rights to vote, no rights to property, and they were beholden to whoever their, either their spouse or their parents, particularly father, had to say. But the other thing I would add about her, which is remarkable, she also came of age right around the Civil War, and really after the Civil War when she met her husband and they really got going. And in addition to being a woman, I think the other thing that she had to contend with is that her parents were Irish immigrants. Her husband was an Irish immigrant, and there was a lot of anti-Irish sentiment at the time. There was the Know Nothing Party going on, where essentially, the Irish were not considered white.
Right.
And I think from that perspective, there was also another current of adversity that she had to overcome, both with her husband and then even after her husband, which just makes her even that much more tenacious to me.
Yeah, and I think to me, like you take a look at the landscape of this, country's history, and there's a lot of amazing things that have happened in this country, but there's a lot of blemishes and a lot of things that, or missteps, or whatever it is you want to call it, and some of them were just, I guess, unintentional consequences of the time of not knowing any better, and just, as we have evolved, or whatever it is you want to call it, but a lot of times we take a look back at our history and we think about slavery. We don't think about other races or ethnicities or whatever the case may be that might have faced adversity. And so like the Irish immigrants and different things like that, I think that was, I knew a little bit about it, that you've seen movies and different things like that, but to read it in the book and to be able to kind of see that running in parallel with the struggles of like African Americans and things like that, former slaves and different things in the book was really eye-opening to me.
Yeah, no, I think I'm completely in agreement. I think part of actually what's really interesting about the history of American whiskey, particularly the move towards West, you're talking essentially poor white immigrants that are trying to make a living, and mostly farmers and mostly farmer distillers. And, they really have to work hard to make a life for themselves. And I think that's a current that is really an important part of the history. And Mary and her husband really embody that. And I think the fact that they had to work to overcome that shows, again, their spirit and their just tenacity again.
Yeah, and so taking a step away from the book, I mean, and kind of drawing a parallel, or not parallel, but drawing from the book. One of the things that I noticed in the book that was really interesting is that history of the area where they were distilling and where they had started their distillery, and just knowing the brands that had come out of that area. So you had, the Old Rippy, the what do you call it, Bond and Lillard, or Lillard, whichever it is, and then also what's the
WB Saffold.
WB Saffold, and those are all prominent like families in the area.
Frankie,
and I just thought that was interesting that you look at Wild Turkey, right? They did their Baron Whiskey Baron series, but there wasn't a Mary Dowling release or a Dowling or whatever. So I mean, I guess that's kind of a good thing for you in the sense of reinvigorating or reintroducing this brand into the market, but you saw it again. Like nothing against Wild Turkey, but why wasn't there a fourth one in that? Because they were all there at the same time, all making a big impact on whiskey at that time. And so why was that one left out of their series? So maybe they just didn't own the rights, and that's a question maybe for them, I guess. But that gives you a little bit of a
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Of course, I don't know exactly what the rhyme and reason is, but when you go to the cemetery in Lawrenceburg, which I definitely recommend if anybody gets an opportunity to go to that neck of the woods, if you're going to Wild Turkey, you should definitely pay a visit to Lawrenceburg. It's a beautiful little town. The Dowling mansion is still there, right across the street from the Rippey mansion. So those are both historic sites. And you go just down the street about a half a mile, and there's the cemetery, and all those families, all those folks are resting there. And it kind of gives me goosebumps every time I go there, because you kind of feel the spirit of all these folks that laid the foundation for American whiskey, bourbon in Kentucky. And it's pretty cool. And I think, in some ways, what I'm excited about is to be able to, with this book, shed some light on Mary, of course, but also all the other cast of characters. Because to me, honestly, this is like the Yellowstone of bourbon. Because there's so many
I like it.
interesting
I would watch
folks
that
and
show.
going back and forth that, there's so many interesting kind of elements there that I think we're just beginning to tell that story.
I think that's awesome, and I would love to see that picked up by the Landman and Yellowstone people, and see if they'd ever do something like that. That'd be cool. So one question I had for you is, I'm reading this book. So I grew up on reading and different things like that, but one of the things that really got me into, like, I don't even know if it's alternative reading or whatever, but a phrase I always liked was by Jimmy Buffett. He says, factionalize fiction, or factualize fiction, or fictionalize fact. But then I read a lot of things that are, taking things that have happened historically and then what ifs, like you think about different shows, but different books and different things. So I read a lot of, books that talk about historical things that might have been this way or might have been that way, and they have to fill in a lot of gaps. Obviously, you took a lot of articles and you took a lot of different, maybe interviews of existing family members or different things like that, but you have to fill in the gaps. I mean, there's conversations in this book. So take us through that process of what that's like. Like, where is it that you, I don't want to say as an author or artist or whatever the case may be, where is it that you allow yourself to fill in the gaps, but then draw a line that, you have to keep it at a certain level of fact and, historical accuracy?
Yeah, when I first started, the plan was to write essentially just a flat, very kind of documentary style book.
Yeah.
And the more I found out about her, especially in terms of these cast of characters in her life and the events in her life, the more intriguing it got. And I felt like if we write it as a documentary, it's going to be two-dimensional.
Yeah.
And what gave me confidence that we can do more than that, write it as a historical fiction, is that we had the characters. I mean, essentially, 95% of the characters that you have in the book are real. And we knew the events. For example, the process that she went through with the courts, the DA, the judge, so on and so forth, even the other experiences that happened around her distillery being burned down and so on and so forth. We knew those things from lots and lots of documented sources. We also had the benefit of family members that joined up, provided pictures, narratives. We also even had an opportunity to actually connect with a couple of members of the Beam family, which provided pictures, for example, of the Juarez distillery, and even got a chance to talk to the grandson of the gentleman who was literally taking Mary's bourbon from Juarez back up north. And all these people started providing lots and lots of information, coupled with the other things and other sources that we had. And it felt like, at least for me, I had a good sense of what this person was like. And we started imagining these conversations. So the part that we took creative liberty was conversations that we imagined Mary had with her husband, with her children, with her distributor, and all these other cast of characters that we knew had happened, and we got different sources telling us about it. Even having artifacts, by the way. The distributor that she had from Chicago, Heinrich Hansen from Grums and Ulrich, was an interesting character because he literally did correspond with her and also gave her some gifts that the family still has. So we started kind of, extrapolating from that and imagined that. And we knew that there's some creative license there, but we felt that we're true to her personality and some of the dynamics that may have, played out because, we knew what she did behaviorally. And quite honestly, that's where my psychology background came in a little handy, because with my co-author Eric and I, we're going back and forth and trying to think about these different cast of characters and how would human beings respond and react in certain situations. And that, made us feel a little comfortable that we can take some chances and create those conversations or imagine those conversations.
Well, the book is written in such a facet that as you're reading it, you really feel like you know Mary Dowling as a person.
Yeah.
It's like you're sitting at the dinner table and you're just listening to their daily occurrences and you're just getting to know them.
Well, and I'll say one of the things that I I get offered a lot of type of stuff like this, like books and different things that a lot of times I'll just pass on because it just don't sound very good. And this one immediately, like when I got offered this book, I looked it up and read a little bit about it, read a little bit about the history that I could find quickly, and I immediately said yes to this one after I did that real quick, and I'm glad I did. I actually read this book on my trip with my wife through Italy. And I'm in Italy, surrounded by just history and amazing things. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I know that our history is not even nearly as long and as deep as, European history, but there was something about being in a historical place, reading a book about our history that really, I think, made me attached to it a little bit more. But I couldn't put the book down. I read it quickly, while we were sitting there. I just couldn't. I was waiting for places in our trip where I could sit down and read more of the book. Yeah, from that perspective, it was well written. It was a page turner because you did a good job of marrying those facts and that history and all of that information that is, that you got from research and everything else, to also creating it to be a very interesting story. Mm-hmm. Not to say that her story wouldn't have been interesting even in like documentary or biography format, but I think you made the right decision. And that little blurb at the beginning about how you made that decision or when you made that decision or whatever was kind of neat, and it set the stage for me. I was cautiously optimistic when I was reading at the beginning, and then the more and more I read it, the more and more I was just pulled in. So
when I learned about the Mary Dowling story was a few years back when my wife and I saw you at Bourbon and Beyond. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
Okay, yeah, I gave you a sample of my experimental barrel, and yeah.
You talk about that all the time. That's so funny.
And you were up there talking about Mary Dowling, the mother of bourbon, and your project with your whiskeys. And my wife said we need to find those, and I want to learn more about that. So it's a captivating story.
It is really.
Listen, guys. Yeah, this is absolutely music to my ear because you never know with these projects how it's going to get received, and the fact that you guys really felt like it was a page turner and it was an interesting story, it means a lot. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would not say that if I didn't feel it, and I mean, my wife was kind of making fun of me like that. You're reading that again? Because I'll read. And I'll read for a week, and then I'll put a book down, and I'll leave it down for a month, and then come back to it, and then have to kind of read like the last chapter, remember where I was, or whatever. Or maybe I'll read 2 or 3 pages at night as I'm falling asleep, and then have to read a page or two of those that I forgot as I was falling asleep. This wasn't the case. I was taking a chance to taking the opportunity to read this every chance I had. So if we're sitting by the pool in Amalfi, or if we were on the train between Venice and Florence, or whatever the case may be, I was reading. And as far as time was concerned, I read this pretty quick. I'd say that the toughest thing for me was having to jump back and forth between the family tree at the very beginning to the actual people as they're being talked about, because there was a lot of people, mm-hmm. and wow, the things that she had to go through in her life, and not just her, but her whole family. That's just crazy.
Well, there was a lot of kids.
But a lot of kids and a lot of tragedy, so
yeah.
And it sucks that has to be the case, but I think that's kind of a recipe for a good, story. As long as the person, can find some success out of it. There was a lot of tragedy and a lot of things happening. So,
well, in a lot of ways, you mentioned Europe and the depth of depth of history there. I think in a lot of ways, we have a lot of amazing stories that are still to be uncovered. That was one of the things that, honestly, I walked away. That's why I said, in a lot of ways, this book is kind of potentially the beginning, almost like that Yellowstone of bourbon, where you can kind of go back for it, you can go forward, because the story of folks moving out west from West Virginia to Kentucky and settling in, there's so many interesting cast of characters and complicated stuff, because you got the industrial age going on at that time, moving into the Gilded Age, and then going to the 20th century, and these people are just adapting and adopting all these things that are going on, and it's just fascinating characters. It's like the Wild West for me. It felt like this is the Wild West. That was the new frontier, and there's not a whole lot of books written on Kentucky as the Wild West, but it was really like the Wild West of bourbon.
Well, yeah, I mean, you make a point of talking about them, having, town meetings about bringing in electricity and bringing in a train, and different things like that. Like, I mean, those two things alone, like, you're sitting there thinking, oh, that's only 150 years ago. But then you're sitting there thinking, oh, well, they don't even have, electricity, or they don't even have trains, or some of them probably don't have running water, and just crazy. Like, to think that that's 150 years ago.
When I was reading about the first train coming in, I was picturing the track at Wild Turkey that you can see from behind the building. I'm like, is that the track?
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was no bridge over the Kentucky River. They had to, get on a little boat to get out, get across, the ferry. I mean, life was very different, very different.
Yeah, I honestly, the mix of the history and then the storytelling and the fact that it's all revolving around whiskey is what I was just immediately pulled in, and I enjoyed it.
And the cards were stacked against her almost the whole time.
Yeah.
Like when John died, and I know I'm spoiling a lot here,
not
but
really spoiling. It's history.
When
it's
her
like telling
husband,
people the Titanic sank.
Right. Well, when her husband passed away, and she had to deal with the banks and whether or not she's actually going to be able to continue the loan to continue the business, nobody had to extend their hand out and help her.
No, I mean,
and they were beating
they tried
around
not to. So I mean,
right.
I mean, those types of things, but that's again what I was talking about, like with the hardships of women trying to own a business and all that. And it was interesting that, like, every time you thought things were kind of looking up or things were going her way, something would, come up and try to knock her down. I mean, whether it was just life in general or whatever. But I thought it was an excellent read. For me, this is right in my wheelhouse. So like I was saying before, like that factualized fiction or fictionalized fact, where this is, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably 90%, fact. And then, like you said, filling in the gaps with fictionalized conversations and things like that. But, probably pretty accurate based on your research and stuff like that. So I love that type of stuff. I read that type of stuff all the time.
My co-author, Eric Goodman, Eric came in, and part of the reason I brought Eric in is because he's fantastic at doing this kind of research. And together, I mean, we were at it for well over a year and a half, not only, researching folks here and data here in Kentucky, but also going to El Paso, going to Juarez. So it was a pretty arduous process, but in the end, again, the more we discovered about her, the more interesting the story got, and ultimately, I felt that I can fill in the gaps with regards to the conversation points with Eric and try to bring these characters to life in a way that just like you said earlier, it keeps your attention, keeps your engaged, and even more curious about what it was like back then, and all the things that they had to overcome.
Well, and I think you had the benefit of the timing of everything too, like having this story, straddle Prohibition, which is obviously a very unique time in our history as a country, and just seeing the trouble that distilleries that were very successful were up against, and again, unintended consequences of something like that the group of people that were trying to make the country dry. I mean, how many people they put out of work, how many successful businesses did they bankrupt, how many, those types of things. And that's just, with the exception of companies like, Mary Dowling's and people like that who were able to move their operations to Mexico and, weather the storm, if you will. I mean, how many people had that opportunity? Most of them went defunct or went out of business. So I think that's pretty impressive alone. Just, and again, a testament to a woman in a man's world at that time. Being able to think and troubleshoot and solve, problem solve and do that when that's not really thought of as a strong suit for women at that time. You know what I mean? Like, which is wrong. It's just, it's just interesting. That's just the way it was at the time. That's how people thought.
Well, she had to be the way she was. She had to be tumultuous.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna survive or you're gonna get pushed out, right? I think
Right.
that in a lot of ways, actually, what makes me think about listening to you is that the themes in this book and her life are still here. There's still contemporary issues, and as an example, the whole, temperance movement and this
Yeah.
idea of trying to, go towards prohibition and manage people's choice around alcohol. Well, right now we're in a situation where, up until recently, with particularly the previous administration, there was talks of trying to change the basically health recommendation on alcohol. It's not my position to say yes or no, but you see this kind of movement toward prohibition again of alcohol in a way that's more subtle, but it's still there
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people who still feel that government has to step in and manage and tell folks what they should consume and what they should not consume. And, in a sense, again, these kind of themes that Mary contended with 150 years ago are still here with us in some ways.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, and I think, this isn't exactly along with what you're saying, but another thing that I remember in the book that I thought was really it was interesting to me because I took a film class back in the day, and it's been a long time ago, but one of the things that what was the movie that came out that was kind of brought reemergence of the KKK and all that, Birth of a Nation. So the mention of that in the book, and then one of her daughters, basically kind of being on the wrong side of that type of thing. But then it goes to show, in my opinion, if you want to draw parallels to Nazi Germany and kids nowadays that are so far removed from that, they don't have a real sense of what actually happened back then. In the book, they're in the 19 teens, and they don't have any real connection to slavery and what really happened then, and that type of thing. So I think it's interesting how, I don't want to say history repeats itself, but similarities of historical things kind of repeat themselves, and that, I don't know if that was even an intention as you were writing it, but that was one of the things I was thinking about as I was reading it, drawing parallels to that movement that happened, the KKK reemergence in the 19 teens, with similar to kids today who have really no idea what happened in Nazi Germany with the extermination camps and the concentration camps and things like that. I think that was. And that may be a stretch, but to me, that's where my head went. So
Now, was that Mary Catherine and John Bond that were on that side of it?
Yeah, so Mary, her oldest daughter,
Right.
was part of the UDC. She became the chair of the United Daughters of Confederate. And, what was interesting for me, again, kind of putting my psychology hat on, is that what I realized that in a lot of ways, Mary Bond's reaction to kind of join the UDC and all that was also a reflection of, part of what she was trying to do in a community where she didn't feel part of the majority, right? So for her to want to marry a Protestant and join that part of the community was in some ways, it's like understandable. I mean, it's a lot of immigrant kids come here, and those, if their parents have accents, they don't want to hang out with their parents.
Right.
They don't want to be identified with that background and heritage because they don't want to be subject to prejudice, and they want to be part of the main community that they're born and raised in. And I think in some ways I understood that tension that was created between mother and daughter. But I think that's part of what makes this story interesting, and part of ultimately made me decide to let's bring that dialogue in the conversation. Let's imagine these discussions because it makes these people three-dimensional rather than just kind of flat two-dimensional characters in a documentary style book. So you can kind of try to empathize with what they were going through, good, bad, or ugly. You can kind of put yourself in their shoes and hopefully maybe relate in one form or another.
Yeah, I think you did a good job of adding depth, like you just said, to the characters, and I think that's a good description of how you did that. I think that's really interesting because I never really disliked that character other than the fact that she was a little spoiled, maybe. But I think that you're right. I think that that's human nature in a sense, and I think you captured that pretty well, that when you're not part of something and maybe you want to be part of something, that you'll find a way to become part of that something. And I think that's interesting. So,
I'm going to reach into the psychology realm a little bit here.
here we go. Buckle up.
Now, with that whole scenario with Mary Bond and John and Mary Dowling, the relationship between mother and daughter, do you think that maybe some of that was resentment that had been built up when her mother made Ida like a family member after Ida saved the child?
Yeah, I think that when you have more than one kid, each kid has their own personality and their reaction. And the one thing that I always say is that, where you can have siblings. I mean, hell, you can even have identical siblings. But in a sense, each child is unique in the sense that the parents' reaction to them is always different. When I had my first kid, if you have your first kid, you're at a certain point in your life. When you have your third or fourth kid, you're at a different point in life, right? And just your psychology, your personality is different. Your attitude is different. You got more experience in some ways. You may have more money, less money. All these things play a variable, right? So I think in a lot of ways, Mary Bond was, the apple of eye. What we estimated was the apple of John's eye, her father's eye. I mean, she had nothing that she needed. I mean, she never really worked, and she was taken care of all the way through her life. She was treated like a princess. In some ways, I think the parents were trying to compensate for what they didn't get themselves. Right. And sometimes it went to an extreme. And I think that you see this, at least we saw these differences, a lot of them that actually didn't even make the book because there's too much to tell, that we decided to just stay focused on the key characters. And out of the 9 kids, only 3 of them really we decided to lean into. And Mary was one of them, partly because of this conflict. Will, this oldest son, was another one, because Will was a remarkable man who, his parents didn't even, I think they were like that 6th grade education, and this guy ended up becoming a Kentucky congressman and senator.
Right.
And then Emmett, the youngest, who was really the apple of her eye and ended up going to Exeter and Harvard and all kinds of stuff, and ultimately the person that ended up getting things sideways for the family. But those are the people that we lean into. And if you look at the kids, they all had very different issues, for lack of a better word. I don't know if that helps or not.
No, it does, but I don't know if you can hear the dog barking. Something's going on outside.
No, yeah, that's good.
Someone's walking around out there, or a leaf's blowing around something. I think, like I said, there were so many layers to this book, so much depth to this book and to the characters. I think the decisions that you made were the right decisions in who you focused on and the relationships that you focused on. I think you brought in the human condition a lot, from a parenting perspective, from a child perspective. There was really nothing about the book, in my opinion, that I was like, yeah, come on now. You know what I mean? It was all believable. It was all, I don't know. It was just well put together and well written. So I just really enjoyed it. I can't recommend it enough. If you're into bourbon,
we just need a Hollywood producer to pick it up and start making it into a movie.
Absolutely,
or a 6-season TV series. Yeah,
Ken Burns.
That's right.
No, that's documentaries. That's not what this is about. Man. I'm thinking, more along the lines of who's the guy that does Landman and Yellowstone? What's his name? Tyler Sheridan. Yeah,
Tyler Sheridan. Yeah.
So, but no, I will say right now, I recommend this book highly. If you're into history and you enjoy a page turner that, I don't know how you describe this. I mean, I would probably say it's 90% fact, with the filler of, having to come up with, and it sounds like you did a good job of deciding what those conversations should be based off of their personalities and with your psychology or psychiatry background. I think that this, again, I just can't recommend it enough. I think it was a great book. It wasn't overly long. It wasn't short. It was just that perfect, middle-sized book. Like I think it was like 300 some pages, something like that. But it
doesn't psych you out at all.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, like for example, I read the Outlander series, and the first book was like 400 pages, and then the most recent ones are like 7, 8, and 900, and I'm just like, what is going on here? And I curse my sister for getting me into those books, but I can't put them down. I mean, that's another example of, so that's a great example. Outlander series, the Scottish, and then they end up moving to the United States, but historical fiction, right? A lot of the stuff happening in the book really happened. These characters never existed. So you've taken it a step further. You've taken existing characters, you've taken existing historical events, and you're telling the story accurately of how they lived and what they did. And and I found it just as good as a fictionalized work that's kind of based loosely around actual events. So again, I highly recommend this book. Mother of Bourbon is what it's called. It is available, I think, Amazon right now, right?
Yeah, Amazon, all the independent bookstores could order it as well. And, I would say that for those who like to listen to it, it's also available on Audible as well.
Oh,
the only
nice.
caveat I got to give about Audible, because I just realized that I think the lady who did it actually did a nice job, but there was a few pronunciation issues that like she pronounced, I think, Rippy, Ripey, and instead of Versailles, because we say Versailles here in Kentucky, she said Versailles.
Oh, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So you've created some whiskeys that you've named Mary Dowling.
So that's what I was going to move to next.
Are these inspired by the style of what Mary Dowling's whiskey would have been like?
Well, it's a great point. I didn't know exactly what she was producing at the time. I did have some old samples, but we really didn't have any direct references to mash bills.
So hold on
when
one
we
sec.
started
Wait.
laying down. Yeah.
So wait, you had some old samples? Like how?
Old, like Dowling Brothers, samples of Dowling Brothers, and some Waterfill and Fraser pre-Prohibition and Prohibition, because what she did actually, she stole a bunch of barrels to Pappy Van Winkle.
Right.
About 2 years before Prohibition. When she knew she's not going to get a medicinal license.
Yeah.
She had to rebottle them.
Stuff.
Yeah.
What's that?
She had to rebottle them into pints.
That's right.
So you had some pre-Prohibition samples that you were able to taste. Did you get to taste them?
I have tasted them. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we all think about stuff like this, right? So honestly, you get something like that. Do you want to open it? Do you want to taste it? Do you want to whatever? So I know that we have a lot to talk about with the whiskey and all that, but let's.
We've had 80s Dusties.
Yeah, I mean,
but this is a long time before those.
I've had a 70s produced whiskey. I don't think I've ever had anything older than 70s produced. I don't believe. Mm-hmm. So what was that like?
To be honest, a couple of bottles were really good and a couple of bottles were a miss. So I think it really depends of what you got. I've got some Dowling Brothers that were excellent, and a couple of Waterfills that were hit or miss, It's one of those things that has more to do, at least my feeling was, because it was an established distillery, it had more to do with the way the bottles were stored,
right,
than the actual quality of the.
Maybe in light or a warm location versus a nice cool basement or something like that.
Exactly.
Sure. Makes sense.
And then sometimes you get things that even just a little bit of oxygen getting in there, it messes it up. So it wasn't sealed properly. Hit or miss, but overall good stuff. There was some good stuff that I've tasted. I didn't know what the mash bill is. So what happened is, at Rabbit Hole, I started laying down some extra barrels, knowing at one point we might want to do something like this. At the time, I didn't know that we're going to launch a Mary Dowling bourbon. So we had laid down some wheated bourbon. The main way my strategy was, I don't want to create brands where they overlap on the mash bills. I want the brands to be distinct in terms of the liquid in the bottle.
Sure.
So
Makes
I
sense.
had laid down some things that were, like Rabbit Hole's never going to have a wheated bourbon as long as I'm around. So they have the Derringer that's aged in sherry cask and the base is wheated, but we don't have a wheated bourbon for Rabbit Hole. So I decided that Mary would have the wheated basically recipe and weeded double oak. Those are the two bases that we had. And then I wanted to give a nod to her distillery in Juarez, so we decided to age a high rye recipe that we have in a tequila cask. So those are the three expressions that we have for Mary. But I actually found out later in our research, we found a little newspaper clipping where the recipe that they were making in Juarez, we found out what it is, which was 70 15 15. And what we laid down for the tequila finish is 70 25 5. So it was pretty dang close to what she was laying down.
So that you found out later that they were more of a rye distillery.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's cool that you at least found that out. Let's talk about what we have here. We've got a Mary Dowling. What did you say? It's double oaked.
Toasted double oaked,
Toasted
weeded.
double oaked, weeded.
Yep.
So orangish red label.
107 proof.
107 proof, so batch 2, it sounds like. So talk us through that. I've already had a few sips of it. I'm enjoying it so far, but talk us through that.
Yeah, so the base is a weeded bourbon. It's basically 65, 25, 10. And
so for new listeners, that's 65% corn, 25% wheat, and then 10% malted barley.
Malted barley.
Okay.
Malted barley, exactly. It's aged in Kelvin cooperage, toasted and charred barrels. So, it's char number 3, toast level. It's kind of a medium toast, if you would. And then we age it after what you're drinking is somewhere between 5.5 years old. And it's aged a second time in a new toasted and charred barrel for anywhere between 2 to 3 months.
Is that also Kelvin?
It's also Kelvin, yeah.
Nice.
And for your listeners, I've been committed to Kelvin from day one that we started laying down barrels. It's a cooperage right here in Louisville, Kentucky. Everything is handmade, and they use wood fire rather than gas fire. And I think that's one of the attributes that I think is just really makes those barrels quite exceptional.
I didn't know that.
Well, the nose on this is really good. You get that double oak nose. Like it's a strong double oak nose in my opinion. Like I would have maybe not been able to pick that out on my own, but knowing that it's double oaked, I get a lot of double oak notes on the nose. Like there's some spice, which is really good on the nose. It's a good like sweet spice, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's definitely sweet. I get like this tartness too. Like
yeah, but it's not a bad tart.
No.
But I get it's almost like a sweet spiciness, and it's like if there's a back of the nose, if that's a thing.
Right.
The back of the nose gets me a little of that tartness. It's where it starts to kind of show itself, but not a bad thing, like I said. And then when I dive in, and I don't know if you've ever had a chance to listen to JD give any palate notes, but there's usually a little bit of a story that goes along with it. So do you have anything that you've been coming across here?
Not yet as far as a remember when moment, but this is also a fresh open.
Yeah, so what we call a Hyman pour.
I've been kind of I've never told Kaveh that.
Sorry.
No, it's funny.
So we try to break the trends of a neck pour. So we call it a Hyman pour. We call it mouth experience versus mouth feel or whatever, just to be different.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
So for me, I get so a lot of the oak comes through on the palate in a good way.
There's a touch of an oak spice.
Yeah, so there's an oak spice. There's a sweetness. It's like a very, very in the distance kind of confectioner type of sugar that's very, very distant. It's very minute in the taste because that oak spice really amps up. It's not like tannic at all.
No.
It's not like drying my mouth, but the oak is present. There's an oaky spice, almost like a tobacco-y oak presence, in my opinion. So much so that I'm actually going to get a little bit more here.
So whenever I would head back home to visit with my mom, here we go.
Here's the story. Here it comes. Here it comes.
Now, I feel like some of that sweet tartness comes through on the palate. I would always come home, and on the counter, she'd always have these little cherry tarts. They'd have like a pie crust. What do they call that stuff? I forget, but it's
I'm just soaking this in. That's all.
and
I'm waiting on
she
the
would
story
use
here.
a cherry pie filling, and she would always have them ready whenever I'd walk in because she knew I was coming, and they were my favorite. Or she'd always have turnovers ready, available. She would find her way to our hearts through cooking, and,
As all good moms do.
absolutely.
All
JD,
good
I can't
moms and
tell you, man.
grandmothers.
This is it's first of all beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. This is one of the things I tell people when we do tasting. It's just exactly that. Can they allow themselves to let whatever it is they're tasting take him to a place that they remember? I think that's one of the most beautiful things about food and spirits,
Oh, for
because
sure.
it takes you, like you said, this is what a lovely memory. I want to drink this and think about my mom giving me chocolate.
We joke to JD about doing this, but like honestly, I wish I could connect it more to like childhood or even adolescent or young adult memories. I generally I can tell you, oh, I get this, and this. He actually takes it one step further, and honestly, we joke with him about it and give him shit, but it's actually a pretty cool thing.
Didn't Jason one episode say, "Oh, here we go, Fred Minnick at it again"?
Yeah, I mean, but that's why Fred Minnick is so popular. He takes these things and not only gives you marzipan or whatever.
Yeah,
it is.
marzipan.
Marzipan, that's
cookie.
it.
Mm-hmm.
But he tells you where he gets that from, his childhood memories or whatever, and why he thinks that, and it's so he puts a story behind it. Anyone can just say, oh yeah, I get vanilla sugar cookies. Okay, great. That is great. If you can do that, that's awesome. But if you can then connect it to a memory, like you said, or attach it to some sort of story that you had growing up, that resonates even more. So I think as much as we give you crap about it, it's a good thing. It's an amazing thing.
Even if I don't have a specific memory that correlates with what I'm tasting,
you
like
just make it up.
when we were at Old Forester doing a barrel pick recently, and the notes I was getting, I was able to kind of put them together and assume what I could think that would be, and I came up with a banana tiramisu, but instead of ladyfingers, it was almond cookie.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was dead on.
Well,
I mean, he was dead on.
Yeah, listen, I think actually that's one of the things that's really useful, particularly for people that are just getting into bourbon, finding the language to be able to put it to words, because you can taste it and you can say, yeah, I like it, I don't like it, but to go a step further and start putting words to your experience and connecting it to something else that relates to your life, that's amazing. I love it.
I'm not that far removed from it's
No.
good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Right.
Honestly, I'm not. I mean, my journey is very in its youth, if you will. I mean, 5 years now, 6 years, I guess.
Same.
So of drinking neat anyway. Otherwise, it was with ginger ale and ice. So,
Mine was with Diet Coke.
so whatever. I mean, but we all had our beginnings. But I'm only 6 years into my journey, and so I'm just. It took me getting COVID and then recovering from COVID to be able to start actually recognizing the flavors and being able to pinpoint them to something. But then I haven't gotten to the point where I can write a novella with it like you can.
On the back of the nose, I'm getting my grandmother's Christmas anise cookie. But she never used a lot of anise in it. It was just a dash, so it's not strong or overpowering, but it's there.
Yeah, I don't get much anise on this, but I trust you on that part. So what we've told you what we think about this. What are your general tasting notes on this one?
Yeah, for me, this is out of the three of them is the most decadent one. To me, this is
That's
really
a
a
good word.
genuine kind of sip and savor bourbon. It's creamier, it's velvety. It's something that's got a lot of character. I generally like to. I don't put anything in it. I like to taste it neat. Sometimes I pour it on ice, but I think I mentioned before that our first batch of this was 125. So 125, I kind of pour it on a big cube and let it open up. And the same thing with this. I think the main thing is a sip and savor bourbon and let it just really kind of go down your palate and enjoy it. I get similar notes that you get, but a little bit more on the kind of dry fruit too, in the mid palate for me, which is really, again, I mean, to me, it's very lovely and in line with the wheated bourbon. It's got that sweetness to it. I don't like making bourbon that punches you in the face, so I think the notes are very balanced.
Yeah.
Even though it's 107, and I tell this particularly for folks that are not used to higher proof spirits, when you make a good bourbon or whiskey or anything else for that matter, if it's balanced, even at a high proof, it actually shines more as long as you give it time and let it, settle in, open up. And I think this is one of those pours.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And the fact that this is 5 and some change years old, and it's wheated, which generally matures a little bit slower than like a rye-based whiskey or bourbon. This is well-rounded, like you said. I think it has a good balance to it. Decadent. As soon as you said that, I was smacking myself that I didn't say that word. That's a great description.
Mm-hmm. You said dried fruit, and I immediately thought of the fruit leather. Remember
right?
Those packages?
Yes. I thought about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the thing. When you talk about your childhood, I remember it's like my memory goes to those fruit roll-ups.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of where my head goes.
Yeah, and I didn't get that, but once you said it, I took a drink immediately, and I got a little bit of that kind of dried fruit type of that's there for sure. I talk about this a lot with other brands and other people and just other guests, but I like a whiskey that I can sit with through the night. I always say a whiskey that can tell you a story, meaning that you drink it, you have a second glass, and maybe it just with each sip it continues to grow and evolve, and you just get a little bit more the more you drink it. Kind of like this book. Hey, look at me.
Look at that segue.
Look at me with the callback. No, but honestly,
Paul Blart on the segue over here.
Paul Blart.
Yeah, nice connect.
But seriously, like it tells a story. Like I can sit and drink this throughout the night, and I feel like the more I drink it, the more notes I get, the more, the decadence, the layers, the complexity, it all starts to really shine. Versus something that, you drink, you get everything on the first drink, it tastes good, and then the more you drink it, it just kind of starts to fall off a little bit. This is not one of those.
The other thing is that I actually think about, for me personally, the occasion is also an important part of making a decision on what to drink, right?
Yeah.
For me, the double oak is more, I imagine it more as an after dinner pour as opposed to before dinner pour, because it's you've had your meal, you're settled in, and
you had a lot of flavors in that meal. This is
like a perfect dessert for me. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I like that.
There's a light smokiness to it too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot. Like I said, I think the more we drink this, the more we're going to pick up.
Yeah.
And, this is good. It's good. It's got a great mouth experience. It's got complexity, like you said, decadence. There's a lot going on, and for a wheated bourbon under 6 years, to have this type of flavor profile and presence, I think is really impressive. So I think whatever you're doing well. So I think that's a good sign.
Would you attribute that to the Kelvin barrels, you think?
I am religious about Kelvin barrels. I think I've been a fan from the first time I went there, and I do believe that their barrels impart a lot more character with more consistency than any other cooperage. I mean, there's a lot of great cooperages, don't get me wrong, and we do business with them as well. But Kelvin has been, again, there's an artisanship there that is really part of it. I think the other piece is the fact that it's a wood-fired. They're basically using the remnants of the oak to toast and char the barrels. And anybody who's done any cooking, barbecue, the difference between charcoal and gas. And I think those things really do matter in the end.
So it's like the Phoenix, taking old life and generating new.
Yeah, for sure. I like that.
All right.
He's a poet.
He's something. We haven't figured out what he is yet. He's something.
The only thing knowingly Kelvin I've had, and I think Dude too, is Four-Gate.
Or Four-Gate, yeah. I said Foursquare.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few of us who've been, pretty, I think, committed to those guys. I think Peerless, definitely, to my knowledge, has used. I don't know, what percentage, but I know that Peerless has definitely used them. Michter's, I know Michter's has used theirs too. At least the ones once they started producing here, a portion of their barrels I think come from Kelvin as well. So yeah, no, there's some really solid brands that have been a good partner with Kelvin over the years.
That's awesome. That's stuff that our listeners would love to know too.
Yeah, 100%. I think we get that variety of beginners and whiskey nerds, and then ones that are sick of just plain, bourbon podcasts, and they lean into our stupidity and sophomoric humor, if you will. I'm
the stupidity,
and I'm the sophomore. I'm the sophomoric humor. But I think honestly, like we sprinkle in information along with our stupid stories.
Yeah.
So I think we get a lot of that. People like to hear the information and get the knowledge of different things. Man, this is good.
It's a really good one.
Yeah, I've seen this sitting on the shelves, this brand. I've never bought it because there's always just a new brand all the time, I feel like. And it's just, but from a packaging perspective, the glass looks great. The bottle looks almost like a decanter style type bottle. It's got some nice ribbing down the sides. It's circular in shape, but
the neck tag is nice, mother of bourbon.
Yeah, I mean everything about it is appealing. But I just have never pulled the trigger because every time I walk into a bourbon store, I see a whole bunch of new brands. But I'll tell you, if you get a chance to buy this, this is the only one I've tasted, but the double oaked, right?
Yeah, barrel proof double
oaked. Mary Dowling. If you get a chance to buy it, I think it's definitely worth giving it a shot. There's a lot to it, and it's very tasty. I could drink this all evening if I wanted to.
I think there's a lot of people out there that just don't know that it's affiliated with Rabbit Hole and that you've created this.
Yeah.
And if they knew,
for sure, because
they would
I didn't
pick that off the shelf. Because I have friends who are just love the Derringer, love the Cave Hill, love the High Gold.
I'm a big Rabbit Hole fan.
Yeah. And if they knew, they would probably pull it off the shelf more.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, I think that's part of the reason, having conversation with folks like you guys makes a lot of, helps the brand to get a little bit more attention to it. And yeah, everything that is in Mary Dowling has been made at Rabbit Hole. I think it's one of those things where I'm very proud of because, there are a lot of brands out there, but there's a lot of brands that are also just sourcing and blending, which is nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, there is something about, soup to nuts that make a huge difference in terms of the product. Because, to me, when I go and pick up a bottle, doesn't matter what category, I like something that's original, something that's genuine, and it's got that craftsmanship. And I'll tell you, Mary Dowling definitely has that. And I think along those lines, you mentioned the package. I'll tell you a quick story of if you have the cork there, if you have the cork on top of it, there's a little image of what, basically this is, so just a backstory of this. When I was starting to think about the brand, my wife back in the day giving me these poker chips from basically late 19th century poker chips.
Oh, wow.
And this image was on that poker chip.
Really?
And when I'm looking and trying to figure out, what Mary Dowling looked like, this is before I knew anything. So I told my wife, Heather, I said, I love this image. I'd love to be able to use it. I just don't know if this looked like her. And then eventually, once we started doing the research, sure enough, some of the pictures that came back, this looked like Mary.
Yeah.
So we're like, we're gonna put this on the bottle. So I thought that was a fun coincidence.
That's amazing.
It is, and to be honest, so back to the book again. The cover of the book has an image of her, and she looks very stoic. She looks very. I don't know what the right word is about it. I mean, she's not unattractive by any means, but the way the book portrays her, she's not very confident in her looks. And I think what's interesting about this is, I don't know. I just feel like this is very of the times, and I know this is actually what from a painting or something that was done of her, right? This was
actually, interestingly enough, so we took a painting of her at an older age, and we used essentially AI to kind of
Reduce the
subtract
age.
age.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
what she ended up looking like.
Okay.
Oh, that's
So,
cool. Well, she's also
yeah.
from a time period where her parents married her off essentially when she was
Yeah.
16 years old, 15 years old. Yeah.
Yep, 16 years old.
So she
exactly.
didn't really have guys looming over her, wanting to grab her hand. She had that
I
decision
mean,
made for her.
they may have had guys wanting to do that,
Right.
but at that time, they may have known. Well, unless I have 5 goats and a distillery or
a cooperage.
right, or in a cooperage, right.
Yeah.
So that's anyway. The book again. I know we're dipping back into the book a little bit, but just that insight into that time period and that that just a glimpse into our history as a country. It's very interesting. And again, we talk about Europe and we talk about these people that have thousands of years, of history. As a country, not counting, Native Americans before we got here, we've got a few hundred years, and this is part of that. It's 150 years ago. It doesn't seem like that long, but in our history, it's actually a pretty decent amount of time ago. So I don't know. I just,
Sure.
it's just weird to me. Like when I'm in another country, like I lived in England for a while and I, traveled through Europe a long time ago, but did it again this year. And there's just, it's amazing to see like churches there that are older than our country, and then you don't even think about that until but like if you get a chance and you take a step back and you're like, man, this church is older than our country as a whole. And it's still standing and it looks just amazing to this day. And it's just, I don't know. But then we sit and think about something that's, oh my God, that's so long ago. But it's really only 150 years ago. And it's, our history and how much technology has changed, electricity and running water and all that type of stuff. It's crazy how quickly everything's changed in that amount of time. But still, I don't know. That was a stupid segue, but I don't know.
No, you're right. I mean, look, it's a lot has happened, and I think 150 years ago feels like a long time, but it's a blink of an eye,
right?
And we're connected to the legacy of her in a lot of ways, and that's part of what I think makes the story intriguing. And I think along those lines, I don't know if you guys heard or not, but she is going to be inducted in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame posthumously this year.
That's amazing.
So I'm really excited about that. Her family members will join us.
Or any of the family members coming. That's good. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then members of the Beam family are going to be there too. And in fact, the Bruce Phillips Beam, who is the gentleman who provided the pictures from Juarez, tells me that every year the Beam family gets together for a reunion. And every year they do a toast to Mary Dowling.
Oh, that's amazing.
And what's remarkable is they've been doing this for years and years and years because they feel that they owe a debt of gratitude to her because during Prohibition, she basically gave Joseph L. Beam and his sons a job.
Yeah.
And without that, they would have lost at least one generation in the continuity of being in the bourbon business.
Sure.
So that toast is a legacy of Mary. And I think in a lot of ways, it's going to be exciting to have the Beam family members there as well.
Yeah, when I was reading that part of the story, I actually got chills thinking about that, and that actually crossed my mind. That continuity of generations of Beams that were able to continue working in the industry, that did actually cross my mind. I didn't know what part of the tree of the Beam tree and all that kind of stuff that it was, but that actually crossed my mind. So that's interesting to hear you say that out loud. That's pretty cool.
You think about all the Beams thereafter too, with the Parker,
but
Stephen, and
but that's what I mean. To think about that continuity though,
right,
of before and after Prohibition, that would have never necessarily happened if they weren't able to go down to Mexico and continue that tradition.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those guys basically, because of Prohibition, ended up, Joseph L. Beam was doing manual labor during Prohibition,
right? Because
he couldn't get a job, and distillery had closed up, and that was it. So,
if you think about it too, that's before Congress or whatever had declared that bourbon had to come from the United States. So technically, even though it was made in Mexico, it was still technically bourbon at that time. So
yeah. All the way to 1964.
Right.
Absolutely.
But that's what I mean. That's kind of neat. You have Mexican created bourbon. Just it wasn't wasn't a
In
thing
fact,
that you
I'll
thought
tell you,
about.
so I don't know if you guys follow the secondary market, but I follow it and try to see kind of what's going on, particularly in these auctions. And there was a Sotheby auction not too long ago, and they had a few bottles, 2 bottles, I think, or 1 or 2, from the Juarez Distillery, Mary's
Wow.
Distillery in Juarez,
Wow.
that was on auction. And I think because of all the kind of attention that this brand has gotten, the price of that bottle had been really jacked up.
I can only imagine.
I bet you have definitely affected some secondary prices, and
Yeah, I'm sure.
and her being inducted this year should hopefully
yeah.
boost your brand.
Yeah, raise
I would
awareness.
think. So
One
that's
hopes, yeah, definitely.
yeah.
I think the main thing is I want people to learn about her, tell her story, and I think the book hopefully is able to do that for us. Of course, get a glass of bourbon with it and enjoy it, and that even means more.
Yeah, no doubt. Had I known about this, I would have been drinking this while I was reading it. But I was in Italy, so there wasn't a lot of bourbon choices in Italy. So, oh well. Well, I want to thank you for having the time to jump onto our podcast. Mother of Bourbon is the name of the book. Independent bookstores, but also Amazon available, Audible as well.
Yep.
For yourself, is there any social media for the book itself, or is it more just follow you and Eric, or what's the social media?
Yeah, so Eric's really not in the picture in that sense. So it's mostly myself, and then Mary Dowling Whiskey Company is our website, but on Instagram and Facebook, you can certainly find Mary Dowling and whiskey, and follow us and get more information about other special things that are coming out. One of the things that we're working on for Mary is a bottle and bond release, hopefully sometime next year, as well as starting our single barrel program for her too.
Oh, nice. We have a single barrel club.
We do have a single barrel club.
Real quick, so how many states is the whiskey available in, and is that changing anytime soon? Go ahead for that.
Yeah, we are right now, from a distribution standpoint, in about 45 states, and we're basically, I think part of it now is just making sure that we're able to get on the shelf with certain big retailers. It's in process. So if you don't see it on the shelf, please ask your local liquor store, and they should be able to order it. And if you're not able to get it, you can certainly contact us, and we'll facilitate and make sure that you're able to find a bottle.
Who are the 5 states of shame?
5 states of shame.
The 5 that
It's a
you're
good question.
not
I don't
in.
remember off the top of my head. It's somewhere up Midwest, way close to Washington State area.
Okay,
So,
okay.
It's probably Wyoming and out that
Yeah.
way.
yeah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana. I think those are the ones that are late joiners.
Late join. He spins states of shame into late joiners.
High
That's
West
fair.
is probably
That's fair.
protesting to keep you out.
High West, jeez. Nah. Hey, listen.
I think
What is
they're
it?
They're good.
Rising
Yes.
tides or something
That's right.
about raise all ships or something. I don't know how what the saying
Yeah.
is, but it's something like that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I've really enjoyed talking with you. I mean, not just about the book, but just about whiskey in general. And it's always fun to have a good guest on that just has a wide, grasp of knowledge, kind of like, I don't want to admit it, but kind of like JD over here with his, stories of taste and, history of drinking. And I guess your family just cooked all the time. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of food.
A lot of food. All right. But thank you again for coming on. You're welcome back at any time. We'd love to have you on anytime you have anything you'd like to announce. Reach out to us, and we'd love to have you back on.
I appreciate it, guys. This was a lot of fun, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, that wraps up this episode. Thank you for joining in on yet another Hunt for Great Bourbon. Please give us a 5-star review anywhere you are listening. But if you don't, leave us some constructive criticism in the review so that we can better improve our show. But until then, sit back, grab a pour, kick up your feet, and enjoy some bourbon.
Tune in each week. Sit back. Tune in each week. Grab a pour. Tune in each week. Kick up your feet and enjoy. Kick up your feet and enjoy.
The Bourbon Hunters podcast has been craft distilled, produced, recorded, and edited by Dude Pool. For any feedback, questions, or episode ideas, please reach out to info@bourbonhunters.com.